Tonight, the killing fields of El Fasher, at least 60,000 people unaccounted for after rebel forces seized control. Public executions, mass rape, and bodies in the street will bring you first-hand accounts from inside Sudan.
They chose people and executed them in front of us. They kill them in front of you and say, bury your brother, and we just have to pour soil on them.
And we hear how senior military officers fled the besieged city, leaving civilians and their own soldiers to die. One senior rebel commander told Sky News at least 7,000 people were killed in the first days after they were captured. That's been dismissed by his bosses as total rubbish. We'll bring you Yusra's full report coming up. Plus, the Epstein files. I'll speak live to the U.S. congressman who's demanding that Andrew give evidence in Washington. A miracle and a tragedy. The only survivor of the Air India plane crash speaks for the first time. And a political newcomer hated by Donald Trump, who could soon become the new mayor of New York. That's all coming up on The World with me, Barbara Serra. Good evening. Last week, we brought you details of a massacre at a maternity hospital in Western Sudan. Tonight, we have a much clearer picture of what happened in the city of El Fasher after it fell to rebel forces. Once home to 500,000 people, it was cut off from the rest of the country for months by the Rapid Support Forces. But last week, the Sudanese army gave up fighting. Its senior officers fled and left civilians to fend for themselves. Well, the RSF fighters are celebrating here, but what you don't see is the groups of men executed in public, the mass rapes, the demands for ransom, the dead bodies lining the streets. Aid agencies estimate 70,000 people fled El Fasher for a humanitarian safe zone, but only 10,000 of them have been accounted for. That's 60,000 people still missing. The fields outside their city were turned into execution zones, and it's likely many of them did not survive. Our Africa correspondent, Yusra El-Bahir, has this report.
Tens of thousands fleeing for their lives, stalked by the Rapid Support Forces that captured their city. In this investigation with Sudan War Monitor and Lighthouse Reports, we can reveal that the thousands escaping El Fasher were targeted by the RSF, as the military's top brass secured their own safe passage, leaving civilians and their own troops to their death. Of the masses of people who fled the city so far, more than 60,000 are still unaccounted for, with many feared dead in the killing fields outside of El Fasher. The tens of thousands expected to flood this safe zone in Tawila are yet to arrive, with survivors detailing the horror of their escape.
Some are asked what their ethnicity is, and they leave them. Others say their ethnicity, and they kill them. They took all of our belongings as we left. My wife and I got to Gurney, and we were held with 400 families. They chose people and executed them in front of us. They kill them in front of you and say, bury your brother, and we just have to pour soil on them. They were killing based on ethnicity. They would come and ask us what our tribes are.
In an effort to find the missing, we traced crowds of civilians on their way out of El Fasher and found that many of them were captured by the RSF further afield. In this video, we see a group and two men. The first with a yellow hoodie and black jacket walking beside a dirt berm. As men, women, and children walk along, we see another wearing a red turban. In a later video, we see the same group and same two men, one in the same yellow hoodie as the previous footage of civilians leaving El Fasher, sat on the ground in front of RSF fighters in a crowd we are told had around 2,000 people. That includes the man in the red turban, who's also seen here. They began to run as RSF fighters chase and beat them. They've been separated from the women and children. Of this single group of 2,000 captives, we're told only 200 made it to the nearest displacement center in Tawila. Some sent videos to their families, asking for them to pay ransom.
I am one of the sons of El Fashir. I left to go to Tawila. I've been held along with other men who were only being released when their families sent money. Those who didn't were executed.
Others are executed on sight. These captured men plead that they have nothing left to steal, as the RSF hurl a racial slur and then shoot them both dead. In another video, we see bodies dumped in a trench. There is at least one woman among the corpses, as more are executed live on camera.
This brutality comes after the RSF encircled, starved, and shelled El Fashir for over 18 months in their battle with the army for the last capital in Darfur under state control. Several high-level sources told us that top state commanders, officers, and political leaders secured their own safe passage out of the city in over 100 vehicles, some of them armored, leaving civilians and their own troops behind to be captured along with the garrison.
A soldier who was left behind describes an abandoned command. He said the army commander had left the garrison. They completely abandoned us. We were surrounded 26-1 in the morning hours. Suddenly, everything collapsed on us in the defense. We asked what's going on and were told everyone fled. Then the shelling turned on us. A civilian who escaped that morning confirms the chaos. There was no coordination over withdrawal, he says, and it seemed to be a surprise to the remaining fighters on the front line. Some were leaving the city and others were fighting battles with the RSF. In response to our findings, the Sudanese Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan told Sky News that the decision to withdraw was unanimous among the Armed Forces, Regular Forces, and the Joint Security Committee, and that battles broke out during the retreat. He added that soldiers were not left behind but were tasked with securing the withdrawal, performing their duty as required. As the remaining soldiers fled in their cars with civilians, RSF drones watched them from the sky. High-resolution satellite imagery captured by Vantor shows burnt vehicles grouped together south of the siege berm. The RSF drone finds it too. And this video we located to the same site shows dozens of bodies, some in fatigues and others in civilian clothes. We've turned them into dust, he says. Fighters celebrate in front of the burn site. A top RSF commander with direct knowledge of the operations told us that at least 7,000 people have been killed in El Fashir in the first 5 days of capture by RSF fighters who are systematically targeting civilians from non-Arab tribes and are killing 300 to 400 people at a time. All overseen, he says, by RSF Deputy Commander Abdulrahim Dagalo, who we can see here, filmed in the city shortly after his forces seized it. Our previous reporting backed allegations that the UAE militarily supports the RSF, though the country officially denies it. The spokesman of the RSF's political administration, Ta'sis Ala Nugud, acknowledged atrocities had been committed by their fighters, but told Sky News the harrowing death toll shared by one of their commanders is total rubbish and part of a big fake media campaign, and that the RSF have delivered 50 trucks of humanitarian aid to El Fashir. Videos shared on RSF channels show El Fashir's emaciated residents receiving food, after months of volunteers and aid workers being killed by RSF fighters while trying to bring in relief. Fears are mounting that around 200,000 people are being held hostage in their own city, with no access to internet or phone signal, surrounded by fields turned into execution zones. In Tawila, the survivors wait for news of their loved ones. But these thin crowds are a dark reminder of all those who didn't survive and never arrived. Here in Darfur, the people are paying the highest price. The abandonment and viciousness of a war they never asked to be fought at their door. Yusra al-Baghir, Sky News.
Horrific details of events inside Sudan, where Yusra has been following the story since the war began and has been hearing from survivors.
The people who have escaped have shared haunting stories with us. They've told us that they were stepping over bodies as they tried to leave the city, and then
They headed into these killing fields outside of El Fasher. These are farms that used to feed the people of the city. It became this horrifying arena of massacres, of crowds being rounded up, and some executed and some transferred to other areas. The people that left are extremely concerned about the people inside the city, the people who have survived the siege for the last 18 months, that can't access telecommunications, that they can't reach by phone. And then the others, the hundreds that we've heard, are being rounded up and held in detention centers in different areas. One of the detention centers in Garne, we're told, includes hundreds of people rounded up in schools, including doctors whose families told us that they're being asked to pay ransom. These stories are only a fraction of what we believe is happening on the ground. 60,000 people are still unaccounted for of the 70,000 who fled the city since the capture, and at least 200,000 are expected to be within the city with a lot of fear that they're being held captive by the RSF, that they're not allowed to leave. And if they are allowed to leave, they know that they'll be entering such dangerous territory as these fields are now marked with the bodies and bloods of their neighbors and friends who did try to leave.
And Yusra, there's so much that we don't know, and what we do know is absolutely horrific. You've mentioned the 60,000 people, 60,000 who are unaccounted for. Is there a chance that we may never actually know what happened to them?
There is a chance. I mean, we are seeing numbers that are incredibly concerning. We were told by a top RSF commander that between 7,000 and 9,000 people have been killed in the city in the first 5 days. We can't independently verify this, but sources close to the RSF, civilian sources, are hearing the same thing. Thousands and thousands of people who are killed on the basis of ethnicity. One of the men we interviewed who managed to get to a safe zone, he's of the hundreds that got to this camp in Tawila where we expected thousands to flood into, he told us that they were telling people, what is your tribe? And then based on what their response was, they'd kill them off. And it's that kind of systematic violence, but also completely erratic. I mean, what one RSF officer could do is completely different to what another RSF officer would do. And these fighters are incredibly powerful and armed with very sophisticated weapons. The UAE is accused credibly of supporting the RSF militarily. Our own findings have supported these allegations, though they officially deny it. And so what the people of Darfur are dealing with are the terrorists, the Janjaweed that they dealt with back 20 years ago, who were accused of genocide, now being completely at their mercy again in an era where they are so powerful and unstoppable that they are just leaving, the people there are just being left to their fate in their hands.
So, tens of thousands on the move as the Rapid Support Forces seized control of El Fasher. I've been speaking to Mamadou Diambalde, who's regional director for the UN's refugee agency. He gave me his reaction to Yusra's report.
It's horrific what we are seeing and what people who are fleeing El Fasher and that our teams, our partners are meeting in Tawila. What they are sharing with us are the horrors of a war that is being fought without respect for international humanitarian law, without due respect to the sanctity of human dignity. And this is what we are seeing, and this is what internally displaced persons, Sudanese, are telling our teams in Tawila. They are sharing with us horrific stories of violence, of sexual violence. These are just not acceptable in today's world, and this is just not acceptable.
It's very difficult to get an idea of numbers because we know that thousands have escaped El Fasher. Now, it's unclear how many are unaccounted for, how many have been executed. I mean, we're seeing the images and hearing the reports. I'm just wondering whether you have any clarity on the scale and what exactly is happening to the people who have managed at least to escape the city but not escape to safety.
Over 70,000 people have fled El Fasher, and our teams, our partners have seen them. They arrived traumatized. They arrived without food, without... you see, it just what they have gone through is just horrific. Families separated, and they are coming. They need water, they need urgent health care, and they also need mental health support. And what is also sad, Barbara, is that we know and we are clear that since this brutal conflict started over 2 years and a half ago, that several of them are also going into Chad, and a country that has been receiving refugees since the beginning of the conflict. Over 800,000 have fled. They found 400,000 who are there since the first Darfur crisis over 20 years ago. And these are just the ordeals that we are hearing, the sexual violence that we are hearing, and they need support. They need support from ourselves and our partners.
Tell us a little bit about that support. What is the UNHCR and other aid agencies present doing, not just to try and assist the people coming, but also to prepare potentially for the thousands and thousands more who will arrive?
In Chad, in particular, the government, ourselves, UNHCR, the partners, we've been working on this contingency plan with a hope that it will never get materialized. But with what we are seeing, that level of violence, we are convinced that more people are going to come. So access to the territory, the government has been able to receive the refugees. We are working on relocating them from far away from these border areas where there are still high risk of violence, and then to be relocated to safer areas with shelter, with water, with food, as well as additional support that are required. And but I can say to you, Barbara, that the conflict has just gone for far too long. The horrific violence has just gone for far too long, and at levels that the humanitarian in me has never seen before.
20 years ago, the international community was accused of acting too late to stop the killing. Do you see the same happening now? And what is your call for the international community, who so far has been pretty absent in everything that's been going on?
The Secretary General and the High Commissioner for Refugees and the Emergency Relief Coordinator have all been asking for this violent conflict to end, for a ceasefire, and for respect for international humanitarian law and international refugee law. Are they being listened to? Or sadly, no, not sufficiently listened to. And this is where I think we will need to do much better into making sure that there is a ceasefire and that peace is prevailing again so that people can return home. During all my visit, whether inside Sudan or outside Sudan, including to the borders in Chad, the women and the children that we meet are all asking for an end to this conflict. And I believe that this is what needs to happen as quickly as possible.
Unfortunately, this has been called almost a forgotten conflict, an overlooked conflict. Do you agree with that? Are you disappointed by that? And why do you think that's the case?
This conflict, given the scale, 12 million people, 8 million internally displaced, 4 million outside the country, requires much greater visibility, much greater support. I'm not into comparing crisis, but this one makes every 3 Sudanese displaced the past 2 years and a half. It's the largest refugee population that we have today globally, as well as internally displaced persons. So how can we give this the due attention that is required? I think is a question for all of us, including media, government institutions, and others. But these conflicts requires and deserve attention, and it needs to end so that people can resume normal lives.
You're watching The World. Still to come, Prince William heads to Rio for his Earthshot Prize Awards, hoping to leave the scandal surrounding his uncle Andrew behind him.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Prince William arrived in Rio de Janeiro today to mark the 5th year of his Earthshot Prize Awards. It's arguably the most important week of the year for the future king, and his team will be hoping it isn't derailed by further revelations about his uncle, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, travelled to Brazil, and a warning, her report does contain some flash photography.
The welcome must have made a nice change after a noisy and difficult few weeks. The Mayor of Rio, William's guide, on the iconic Sugarloaf Mountain, showing him the sights and, in a rare moment, handing him the keys to the city. On a day the palace wanted to be all about the big picture and not his Uncle Andrew.
They will be doing everything that they possibly can over the coming days to try and avoid any mention of that name, partly by taking William to all of the big, iconic sites and keeping everything as upbeat as possible.
With a close eye on what people think of the institution right now, it was a friendly crowd, security still tight around him.
We are very happy to have him here. It's a big honor for the city. So he's got the keys, he can do whatever he wants in the next 72 hours. The city belongs to Prince William. I'm still the king, but it will belong to him.
It is his Earthshot Prize that William really wants to take centre stage this week, and this is why.
We need a bit of courage in the system. You guys are providing that low down, but up top, I think we need a bit more courage.
Giving him a hand to raise the profile, Brazilian legend Cafu at the Maracanã Stadium, holy ground when you're a football fan like William. A kick around on the pitch, not just on his wish list, but a surefire hit with the younger audience he's aiming to keep on side. And that's why a quick change and a trip to Copacabana Beach was all part of important image building.
This may feel like an unusual setting for it, but this week they really want to cement in our minds William as a global leader, knowing that people expect him to be socially engaged and progressive, even on issues around his own family.
A few weeks ago, he signalled that he's not afraid to shake things up when one day he becomes king. Now as heir, he's got a week to try and bat away those negative headlines.
And Rhiannon joins us live now from Rio de Janeiro. Rhiannon, an important week, as you were saying, for William, one that he won't want to have overshadowed by his uncle, but will he get his way?
So look, this is a huge week for him, twofold really. One, it's the 5th year of his annual Earthshot Awards, which has now become this huge movement. He wants to focus on that. But also at the end of the week, and I'm sure you'll be talking a lot about this, is the COP UN Climate Conference. He is due to go there on behalf of the King and also the UK government and deliver a landmark speech. So that whole idea of emphasising him as a global leader is really important to him and his team. Of course, though, there has been so much noise around Andrew, his uncle, and that in a way is why you find it so fascinating. He literally flew in this morning. We've just been watching him playing volleyball here on Copacabana Beach, And the royal family, they do have this kind of amazing ability, I think, to kind of keep the eyes front, kind of shut out all the other noise that's been going on, and put on, ultimately, a show on behalf of the UK government to kind of really celebrate Brazil, but also, I think, emphasise the work that they do and why it's so important to UK PLC. So, look, over the next few days, I think we're going to see more of the same. Him visiting huge, iconic places around Rio, kind of really celebrating the culture here, talking a lot about the environment and ultimately trying to put the Andrew problem to one side. But what we have constantly heard over the last few weeks is they can't stop the different revelations coming from various different areas, whether that is the Metropolitan Police, for example, or over in the States. And that is the real jeopardy, the ongoing jeopardy for the royal family.
Rhiannon Mills with the latest there from Rio de Janeiro. Rhiannon, for the moment, thank you. And now I'm joined by US Congressman Suhas Subramaniam, who's called for Andrew to answer questions and testify about his links to paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us here on The World. Now, we were just hearing from our correspondent in Rio de Janeiro. Prince William may want the stories to go away about his uncle, but they're probably not going to, because there's going to be, one expects, there might well be other revelations. Now, you'd like to find out more about his links, and you want him to testify in the United States. Explain to us exactly why you think that's so important.
Sure. Yeah. I'm on the Oversight Committee in the U.S. Congress, and we're doing one of the more thorough investigations of the Epstein case. And what we're trying to do essentially is send a message to the public in the United States and to the public in the world that no matter how rich and how powerful you are, and no matter how high this goes, that everyone who engaged in these sexual crimes, this misconduct, should be held accountable. And so in the case of Epstein himself, I mean, he was never held accountable by the FBI and the Department of Justice in the United States. And that was a huge mistake. And that was a huge stain on those agencies. And now they have a chance to release the files. And in the case of Andrew, he has a chance to come forward and explain his side of the story and explain exactly what he knows. We want to hear everything he knows, because the reality is it's clear he was close with Mr. Epstein. He was close with Ghislaine Maxwell, and so he has information. We want him to share it.
Now, you may want him to share that information. It doesn't seem like he's going to anytime soon. Is there anything that the Oversight Committee or the U.S. in general can actually do to force Prince Andrew to testify at any point?
He is a foreign national, so we cannot force him to testify or come before us or share any information. I will say this, though. One, if he wants to clear his name, this is a good way to do so. But two, even if he doesn't come forward, I mean, we're going to continue to aggressively pursue the truth here. And that means getting the files that the Trump administration is withholding. That means getting more files from the Epstein estate, as well as bank records from the financial institutions that were at times complicit with Epstein. And so, certainly we're going to find the information, whether or not Andrew wants to come forward, and he will be in those documents. And so if he wants to explain himself now's a good time to do so.
The issue around the release of more Epstein files has obviously been a huge one in the United States and quite divisive. And, Donald Trump seems to have slightly changed his mind on it. There's a lot of pressure on him from the Republicans as well. Do you think that the issues around Andrew Mountbatten Windsor have put more pressure on the Department of Justice, on Donald Trump to release more of these files? Or do you think it hasn't really made a difference?
I don't know if the situation with Andrew himself has made a difference in the United States, because it was already such a big story here. The reality is it's actually not that divisive, in the sense that everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants to get to the bottom of the truth. And there's so many Americans that are fed up with the idea that if you're rich and powerful, you can get away with absolutely heinous crimes against young girls. And so what I think is different now is this is becoming a global issue. It's becoming something that people around the world are now starting to ask about, because Jeffrey Epstein committed terrible crimes. He wasn't held accountable. And there were people all over the world who were engaged in these, rich and powerful people who participated or knew information about it. And so no matter where you are or who you are, we're going to find the information and we're going to get to the bottom of the truth.
The family of Virginia Giuffre, who of course accused Andrew of raping her, actually spoke to Sky News last week and through Sky News asked the King to put pressure on Donald Trump to release further files. Again, you said that you don't think that the Andrew case has much to add because the pressure is already there in the United States. But seeing as Donald Trump obviously cares about the views of the royal family and it is becoming an even more global story, again, I wonder whether you think any of that makes a difference whatsoever when it comes to the public pressure.
I mean, I hope that's true. But the reality is Donald Trump is already getting pressure from some of his biggest supporters, even biggest supporters in Congress, to release the files. And they're quite confused as to why he hasn't. I think the reality is he hasn't because he was good friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and he probably knows some of the people, many of the people in the files, and it's probably embarrassing for them. It's embarrassing for him. And so I understand why he hasn't released the files, but again, we're going to continue to put the pressure. Certainly, if the King puts in a word, that would be great. We would really appreciate that. But I think what's more helpful, I think, is if Trump releases the files and we just get to the bottom of this, and if the banks release the financial documents as well.
You are, as you mentioned, of course, a member of the House Oversight Committee, which investigates the Jeffrey Epstein case. You've also said that you don't think it is that divisive in the United States, that most people want the files to be released. But when it comes to the committee itself, how united do you think it is over that? And also, do you think that all members would support your bid to have Andrew be questioned?
We are currently finding that out. And I'm actually in the process of working with other people in the committee to potentially send him an invitation to come talk to us. And so I'll let you know in 3 or 4 days the answer to that question.
But you would have a clear idea now of whether the committee is united over it or not.
I think there is bipartisan support for that. I don't know if everyone unanimously supports inviting Andrew to come tell his side of the story, but I have a sense that there's going to be a lot of people supporting that. But again, I'll know more in the next couple of days.
I will touch base with you soon to find out what the outcome of that is. Congressman Suhas Subramaniam, member of the House Oversight Committee. Sir, thank you so much for speaking to us on The World.
Thank you.
This is The World. Coming up next, we're going to speak to the man who walked away as the only survivor of the Air India crash, which killed more than 240 people.
police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they make almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
What country are you
From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
The sole survivor of June's Air India crash has told Sky News the trauma he's experienced has left him broken. Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, who you can see here in the immediate aftermath of the crash, was the sole survivor of Air India Flight 171, which crashed just moments after takeoff on the 12th of June. He's been sharing his story with Sky News Morning's presenter, Sophie Ridge.
What happened? When did you first realise something was wrong?
It's quite difficult to explain myself.
Do you remember it?
It's very hard.
So you took off and then quite quickly the plane, it stopped? It seemed to hang in the air. Is that right? How is your life now? Do you feel angry towards Air India?
What can... Everything is changing, isn't it? After that crash. Like me, mentally, physically. Also my family is,
Yeah.
All family broke down.
How's it been for your family?
All it broke down and it's...
I'm so sorry that you didn't ask for this. You were the victim, and it's had this impact on you and the people you love. It's very difficult. Do you feel physical pain?
Yes.
What pain do you feel?
You know, my knee, shoulder, and back, and some burning in right left arm. But still pain in my body.
And is it hard to go upstairs, to move around?
Yeah.
Do you leave the house? Do you go out? Do you do things?
Just sit on my bed and all day.
Do you watch TV? Is that what you do?
I don't like anything watching. I just think about my brother and just...
Your brother who died?
He's my younger brother.
What was he like?
He's for me, he's everything for me. He's giving me backbone. He give me all the time. He support me. I still am not believe that is not more.
Well, in a statement, Air India said, "We are deeply conscious of our responsibility to provide Mr. Ramesh with support through what must have been an unimaginable period. Care for him, and indeed all families affected by the tragedy, remains our absolute priority." Senior leaders from across Tata Group continue to visit families to express their deepest condolences. An offer has been made to Mr. Ramesh's representatives to arrange such a meeting. We will continue to reach out, and we very much hope to receive a positive response. And you can watch the full interview on the Sky News app or the brand new YouTube channel, Ridge and Frost. Now, a powerful 6.3 magnitude earthquake has killed at least 20 people in Afghanistan and damaged the historic Blue Mosque. Hundreds of others were injured in the earthquake, which shook the north of the country before dawn. Officials say the number killed could rise as people dig through the rubble of collapsed buildings. The impoverished country has faced difficulty responding to natural disasters. An earthquake in August killed more than 2,200 people and destroyed hundreds of homes. You're watching The World. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the 34-year-old political outsider who appears poised to lead America's biggest city. Stay with us.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu? In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent. I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians. Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting.
Mr Walker, you're anti-abortion, but two women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir?
Connor, what did you say to the president? What did you say?
We had a great meeting. He was a great man.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents, based in Washington, D.C.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here.
Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism? I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
The anger too, and the division.
Where are you from? From Sky News, UK.
Yeah.
Back up.
Mr. Navarro, can
Well, I'm allowed to ask questions, aren't I?
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C.
Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. Has your ego and ignorance, sir, cost Ukrainian lives?
David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody?
Free wherever you get your news.
What words do you have for Harry Dunn's family today?
Have a nice day.
Do you fear a fourth indictment?
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent, based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. Let's go to New York now, where mayoral candidates are making a final push for voters, with a 34-year-old political newcomer seemingly poised to lead America's biggest city. Zohran Mamdani beat the former New York governor, Andrew Cuomo, to secure the Democratic nomination for mayor and is leading him, as well as leading the Republican candidate, Curtis Sliwa, in the polls. Well, recent polling from Emerson College shows Mamdani with a 2-to-1 lead over Cuomo, his closest rival, while Sliwa is trailing at 21%. Well, here's a quick look at what he's been offering New Yorkers. A warning that there is some flash photography coming up.
I'm Zohran Mamdani. I'm running to be the next mayor of New York City.
What about our rent?
We're going to freeze the rent for every single rent-stabilized tenant.
Childcare.
Universal at no cost to New York families.
What about our groceries?
City-owned grocery stores with guaranteed lower prices. We're going to take the price gouging out of produce.
Buses.
Fast and free for every New Yorker. I would make it clear to the president that I am willing to not only speak to him, but to work with him if it means delivering on lowering the cost of living for New Yorkers. That's something that he ran his presidential campaign on. We're putting the worst landlords out of business. And the best part, you're gonna pay for this! But actually, bad landlords are gonna pay for this. New Yorkers deserve a leader that treats public safety with the seriousness it deserves.
If you don't know what you're doing, people could die.
Mr. Mamdani, you want to respond?
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity. And what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience. Absolutely an existential threat to disgraced politicians like Andrew Cuomo, who diminish public trust and are unabashed in their desperation to collaborate with Donald Trump and his donors.
Well, I'm joined now by Christina Greer, host of the New York Focus podcast, FAQ NYC. Christina Greer, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. You can really see in that short clip there just the difference between him and Andrew Cuomo. I guess youth is part of it, but just his personality in general. 12 hours to go before, a little more, before polls open. Look, we don't know if he'll win exactly yet, but that's where the polls are pointing. If so, what do you think it was about him?
Well, Zohran Mamdani has run a consistent campaign. Even in the primary, it's been disciplined. When you think about what is Zohran Mamdani offering, you can clearly say affordability, free buses, childcare, housing, grocery stores. I mean, it's very clear. He's been sticking with his talking points. And when I say he has been everywhere in New York, all 5 boroughs, some candidates tend to just sort of stick to about 7 neighborhoods that have high turnout. Zohran Mamdani has walked from the tip of Manhattan all the way down to Wall Street. Today, he walked across the Brooklyn Bridge. He did a bar crawl this weekend to 6 different clubs that represented, Latino, gay, and lesbian groups, as well as Afro-Caribbeans and Africans. He's hitting up every single different type of New Yorker, whether it's race, ethnicity, class, religion, you name it. He's campaigned, and he's brought people off of social media into the actual political space where they want to volunteer and door knock for him.
In your podcast description, it says that, of course, you speak to all the key players in New York, but you also speak very often to ordinary New Yorkers. So when it comes to them, do you think it was Mamdani's policies? You mentioned some of them that you said were obviously, hopefully will be popular for him. Do you think it was his personality? Do you think it was the fact that he appealed to so many different types of New Yorkers? What was it?
It's all of the above, honestly. During the primary, it's very unclear when there's so much chaos at the top of the government, and we know in Washington, D.C., there's a lot of uncertainty. Voters tend to want to do one of 2 things. They either want to stay with the status quo because of the uncertainty. We know that there were so many layoffs in June. There are international altercations that we're endeavoring in as a nation. It's just a lot of instability with the new Trump 2.0 administration. But voters in New York thus far, and he's not across the finish line just yet, but it seems as though voters are saying, even with all the chaos at the top, we're willing to take a chance. And as much as Donald Trump's policy perspectives are subtractive, he is taking things away from Americans under the guise of, if not illegal immigrants will get them, which is fundamentally not true. The difference is with Mamdani, the personality, the kindness, the integrity that it appears that was the central tenet of his campaign. It seems to be an additive type of campaign. I want to give you all more things as New Yorkers, and collectively we can work together to get these things for us. And that seems to be the crux of the mission of the campaign and the ethos. And thus far, people are responding to it.
I mean, I believe you used the word chaos to describe, chaos at the top as to what's going on right now and the Donald Trump presidency. We know that by and large, New Yorkers have not been Trump supporters, although I'm sure there are some in the city. How big a role do you think Trump in the White House played in the election of Mamdani, both as a sort of, rejection of anyone who might perhaps want to work too closely with the president, but also maybe in the fear that, I think Donald Trump has called him a communist already, so he's not going to be very happy if Mamdani wins the mayorship.
Right. I mean, we know that Donald Trump has put his thumb or tried to put his thumb on the scale. I mean, New Yorkers are pretty unique. He's already said that he would, make Mamdani's job very difficult, and he would try and send in ICE agents and the National Guard under no real auspices, just because he wants to and feels like he can. I think the bigger issue is that he's complicated Andrew Cuomo in quite a bit, because on the one hand, he says, if there's a choice between a communist and a bad Democrat, I'll choose the bad Democrat. Donald Trump has been very active in trying to get the Republican nominee, Curtis Sliwa, to drop out of the race so that Cuomo has a better chance. He has essentially shared donors with Andrew Cuomo. So Andrew Cuomo's had to thread a very difficult needle where at one point he's saying, I disavow the president and the Republican Party. But on the other hand, he does want the president to say, well, I won't come in to New York City if Andrew Cuomo is the mayor. I'll hold back. And so it's been a very interesting dance between two men who have known each other for a very, very long time in Queens.
Another issue that's often brought up when speaking about Zohran Mamdani is his age. He's 34. I mean, quite young for a politician to lead one of the most important, I'm sure you'd say, the most important city in the United States. Do you think that's a drawback? Do you think that's something that has worried some New Yorkers? And crucially, do you think that maybe he is too young and too inexperienced to take on Donald Trump?
I think that's definitely worried quite a few New Yorkers until they meet him and they realize that he likes to read and he's a student of politics and he's a swift learner. I mean, I always remind people we elected Barack Obama president of the United States at 44 years old, which seems very young to me right now. And he, luckily, was not an unmitigated disaster, and some older presidents have been. So I do think, some people have been concerned about that, but I think the discipline in running of the campaign has shown some people that even though campaigning isn't governance, there's a certain level of sophistication that we've seen consistently since Mamdani declared that gives a lot of people much more confidence that he'll surround himself with competent people, with thoughtful people who will help him think through some of these very difficult issues that New York City faces.
Just on a final point, if he does become mayor of New York, do you think that New York will be penalized when it comes to Donald Trump?
I think Donald Trump will try and insert himself in ways that, who knows what is in the mind of Donald Trump. But we also have to remember that this is also the economic epicenter of not just the country, but in many ways, the world. And so there are some limitations for Donald Trump, even from big business, from his own donors, from people who will not take kindly to some of the shenanigans that he'll want to insert just because he thinks he can.
Just on a very final point, we've got 20 seconds. We haven't really spoken about Curtis Sliwa. There were some people who thought that maybe if he dropped out, that would slightly change the balance and would not split the vote against Mamdani. Do you buy that theory?
I do. If Curtis Sliwa were not or on the ballot, I think some Republicans would sit this out and others would vote for Andrew Cuomo, since Andrew Cuomo is much more closely aligned to the Republican Party than Zohran Mamdani.
From the New York Focus podcast, FAQ NYC. Madam, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And that's all from us on The World Tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at 9. News at 10 with Anna Botting is next with the rest of today's news. Thanks for watching. Good night.